Good afternoon, everyone. It's Pablo Zuanic, equity analyst at Zuanic & Associates. We have a distinguished panel here today to discuss the state of the Florida market. A big welcome to Robert Groesbeck. He's the co-CEO of Planet 13 Holdings, Daniel Firtel, president at TRP Company and Cookies, Florida, and Aaron Bloom, CEO of DocMJ Clinics. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to hear you.
And for those of you listening in Zoom or via X or other platforms, as usual, I will ask the questions. If you want to ask questions, please put them in the chat room in Zoom or put them in the X bubble or email them to me, and we'll be happy to try to put them forward. Okay, so let's start with introductions. Bob, what can you tell us about yourself in cannabis, about the Planet 13 background, and about any color you can share about your Florida operation, please?
Sure. And again, thanks, Pablo, for having us. I enjoyed the opportunity to speak with your audience. We founded the company in 2014 in Nevada. We're a Nevada-based company originally with Canadian origins, obviously. 2018, we listed on the Canadian exchange at CSE, and then continued to grow our Nevada operations and then look at opportunities outside the state of Nevada. And since we're focused on Florida today, we acquired a company called VidaCann. We closed that transaction in May of 24, and we've been in a process, since then of, really rebuilding the company, rebuilding the product offerings. And we still, Florida's a bit challenged right now, a lot of competition. Obviously, the question 3 didn't pass in the last November ballot. Mm-hmm. So we're battling typical compression, as I'm sure my colleagues are here on the call, but we'll still believe that Florida is going to be a very strong market. We're still confident that at some point it'll transition to adult use. And I'm a co-founder of Planet 13, along with Larry Scheffler and Chris Wren. And we're all three with the company still, and we're trying to navigate this difficult market. Right. Still excited about the future.
That's good. Great. Thank you, Bob. Daniel, introduction, and just remind us, your company, whether you own the Cookies brand also or mostly the retail operations, if you can just clarify that for the audience from the start. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Daniel Firtel. I'm president and co-founder of TRP Co. We also operate Cookies Florida. We've got about 35 stores around the country. About 17 of them are in Florida. We are not the brand. We are a retail operator. We're fully vertical in Florida, obviously, as you need to be. In every other state that we're in, we're operational in 6 states, and we operate retail only at this time, except for Florida.
Right. Can you indicate what are the states besides Florida?
Yeah, so mostly Florida and California. We've got a store in Nevada, Massachusetts, a couple shops out in Illinois, a couple shops in Colorado as well.
Right. Thank you. Aaron, introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today, as always. I'm Aaron Bloom. I'm by training a healthcare regulatory attorney. I got started in the medical marijuana industry back in 2014. And not everybody remembers this, but the first attempt to legalize medical cannabis in Florida happened in 2014. That ballot initiative was unsuccessful, and I sort of stayed involved with that through the 2016 ballot initiative, which ultimately was successful and gave us the program we have today. As a healthcare regulatory attorney, I got involved primarily with the physicians. There was a lot of fear and a lot of questions in the early days about what could we do and what couldn't we do. And so in order to support the dispensary and the industry that was being created, DocMJ was created at the very beginning of the program here in Florida. And I worked with them from the beginning, helped the doctors feel comfortable and follow what was at that point either unwritten regulations or unknown regulations and misunderstood. And so I've been doing that since 2016, since the beginning here in Florida. We've grown tremendously here in Florida. We currently have 30 physical doctors' offices in Florida. We have over 40 physicians in Florida who see patients. And we've taken this model and expanded to other states. We thought we could be successful. We're in 7 total states now. And so we've been here from the beginning and seen it all. And it's been quite a dramatic rise over the last, what is now almost 9 years of the program.
What are the other 6 states, Aaron?
So we're in Texas, Georgia, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts.
Okay, and before we just go into the questions, in your case, Aaron, just to clarify for the audience, is telehealth allowed in Florida? And is there any type of insurance reimbursement, whether on the product or on the appointment fees?
Yep. So the insurance question is the easy one. I'll answer that first. The answer is no, that there is no insurance coverage at the moment. The telehealth is like many things in the cannabis industry, and certainly in Florida, a somewhat complicated answer. In Florida, under the law, the first visit with a patient and their doctor must be in person in the same room. So you must be sitting in the same room with your doctor on the first visit. After that, for renewal visits, you can see that same physician that you've seen in person through the use of telemedicine. So the first visit has to be in person. The second visit with the same doctor is permitted through telemedicine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bob, so let's go into the details about Planet 13 in Florida. I want to read a few questions here for you. I know there's a lot here, but whatever color you can share for us. What changes have you made to your business, to the VidaCann business since you acquired it? Any resets or changes that you had to implement after the ballot measure did not pass? How are you expanding the assortment of your stores, in terms of SKUs, formats, quality, brands? Let's start with that, Bob. I know there's a lot there.
Yeah, where do you want me to unpack this? Obviously, when we acquired the asset, as I mentioned, the outset in May of 24, there was a bit of getting to know one another. Different cultures, different ideas, different product lines, different operational histories. So there was, quite a bit of work there to get the teams integrated. And in addition to, the cultural shift and adjustments there, which are typical with any, acquisition, we also had some significant facility deficiencies we identified that required attention. So, we put roughly $12 million in capital improvements to the Jacksonville Grow, for instance, automating that facility with new lighting, environmental controls, significant cooling, dehumidification upgrades. So we've been, pretty pleased with how that's transitioning. That's resulted in higher yields, of course, and better quality product consistently. And it's still a greenhouse operation, so it's it's got its environmental challenges. Then with that, we've also, we're in the home stretch on completing our BHO facility, which we hope to have operational mid-November. And we see that as a real opportunity for us to obviously increase our product offerings and our SKU counts, but to really get us into a segment of the market that we've completely devoid of being in. And looking at the extracts market in Florida in general, I think that was about a $93 million opportunity last year. And, we were playing it at about maybe 20-30% of that space. So we see with BHO coming in and, with our history here in Nevada, with our various product lines, which we're migrating to Florida, we see a significant upside. And so we're real excited about that opportunity.
Right. So, Bob, let me stay with you here. And I know it's a bit going back in time and maybe not so relevant, but obviously before the ballot, there might have been some assets for sale in Florida. I don't know if that many. But just a reminder, why VidaCann was the right target for you, the right business to acquire. And I can understand that before the ballot, there was a lot of excitement about what would happen in Florida. But just a reminder, why was this among the several assets that might have been for sale? Why was VidaCann the right piece for you? And I know it's about value, and also it's not just about the right asset; it's also about valuation. But just if you can remind us about that.
Well, it's primarily valuation. So as you're aware, we purchased a license, just a bare bones license without any infrastructure for about a little over $50 million. And as we started moving into the market, identifying grow facilities and looking at retail locations, to scale that operation would have taken years. And, so then we started looking at existing operators down there that shared our vision and, wanted to see the Planet brand grow throughout the state. And so we made that decision to jump in with both feet. And, we had good discussions, good negotiation with the ownership group down there. And we were aligned in that respect. So, at the time we did that transaction, I mean, I think the market's grown by, a little over 100 additional retail stores with a fairly stagnant medical, market. I mean, I think we're in the 950 range with 750 some stores now. So, competitive natures, increased significantly. And, That's resulted in, price compression and, with increased competition. So we're navigating that side of it. But again, Pablo, the big thing for us is we're terribly deficient in our SKU counts and, the categories we're, participating in. So
Right.
we broadened that out. We brought in new genetics, from Nevada. We brought in our Dreamline chocolate brand, our HaHa gummies. We partner now with some, national operators, Oni, for instance, to help us in certain categories, innovation on our topicals. So we're real excited about that. Things are starting to fall into place. And again, it's a challenging market. It'll continue to be challenging for a bit of time, but we're there to stay, and we're going to continue to build on store counts. We're going to be slow. We had a much more ambitious plan, obviously, prior to November of last year. But we're continuing to grow, continuing to open stores in areas that meet our criteria. And so we're excited about the opportunity, and we're going to be careful moving forward, but we think there's a game to be played still.
Okay, great. I'll come back to you, Bob. I mean, just to unpack some of those points there, but Daniel, in your case, what can you share about your operation in Florida? Like, how many stores have you added year to date? According to OMO, you'd be one of the few that's expanding, from a lower base, further expansion planned. How does the feel of your stores compare with peers? And I ask that in the sense that when I look at, correct me if I'm wrong, when I look at Jungle Boys, the Flowery, they seem very rec type of dispensaries, and this is a medical wellness market. Other dispensaries have a different look. Maybe you can share some of that. Does the cookies concept work in a medical market like Florida? Let's start with that, Daniel. Whatever you can share for us. And thank you again I know you guys are a private company.
Yeah, for sure. So the exact store count that we opened this year, I mean, I think it's about 4 or 5 so far. We've got 2 more that'll open this year. We built fully from the ground up, so it's been a huge process, kind of similar to what Robert said, but we haven't acquired any infrastructure or anything like that. And so, we've been slowly growing over the last several years. We started out with a couple hundred light indoor grow. That's now gone to about 1,000 lights, plus nursery and veg. We've got offsite greenhouses that supply a lot of our extracts, but all of our flower, 100% of our flower is all high-end indoor flower. So I think that's a bit of a differentiator for us. A lot of people in Florida have greenhouse flower. And so not to say we won't have greenhouse flower in the future, but we've just been able to control the environments and the quality a lot better in the indoor. And so we still have a few more locations we can do. We'll probably get to about 25 stores by next summer is the goal. And if rec passes, hopefully next year we'll look at expanding. But we really didn't expand to expand, planning on rec. Everything that we had going on was for a medical market. So our sales have actually been growing steadily. We've been picking up some market share. We just had a record week last week with ounces sold. We've doubled our milligrams this year from where we were at the beginning of the year, mainly from kind of similar to what Robert mentioned. We added BHO. The state was a little slow to approve things, so that took a long time. But we were basically operating with indoor flower and live rosin for a couple years, and so we didn't have distillate, we didn't have resin. Now we have all those SKUs. We've got a lot of new SKUs that are waiting on approval from the OMMU. So we see ourselves being able to continue growing probably by 2 or 3-fold our milligrams. And we still have a little bit of room to grow in the flower, just kind of dialing the grow in, getting better yields. We can probably add another 10-20%. And as far as what you're asking about the stores, I mean, I'd say some of our stores, I would say, appear exactly how they look in California, so a little bit more of a rec feel. I think it's definitely a different type of consumer that shops medically, but I think in the last couple of years, a lot of people have been converted that may be sort of like the quote unquote rec customer. You're seeing Jungle Boys doing super well, Flowery, of course. There's us, and there's a couple other guys that have come on board. So I think while it is medical, it's got a little bit of a rec vibe, but it's nowhere near the same consumer type as you see in California or even in Nevada. And I don't necessarily, I think that can be dialed in more, and there's always room for improvement to speak to that customer differently. But that's kind of where we see the opportunities to capture market share by doing that and providing a higher quality flower.
And as you get to 25 stores by next summer, are you going to also have to increase capacity, or do you think that you're pretty much set up in terms of the potential to increase yield and your kitchen and those type of things?
Yeah, we just added some capacity on the extract side in the greenhouse, so we'll be able to service those stores. It might be 23, it might be 25. It just kind of depends on how these next stores perform and how much product we have, but it'll be probably between 23, 25 stores without adding capacity. And then obviously when rec hits, I mean, we'll have to add capacity just to service those 23 to 25 stores.
Right. Got it. Thank you. Aaron, maybe briefly highlight the main difference between Florida and other medical markets where you operate, and you are read of the patient count numbers released by OMO every week. I mean, sometimes some people say there's some double counting there. Let's start with those 2 points. I know there are different questions there.
Yeah. So I'll start with the OMU numbers. The numbers are good. There are some from week to week, if you follow it closely, there are some moves that sometimes don't make a whole lot of sense. But I think if you look at it long term, it evens out, and it's consistent and probably pretty accurate. It shows you patients not necessarily who have active recs, because you can be a patient on the registry and show up on that number, but not have a recommendation from a physician, and therefore you're not able to purchase. So there may be some people on that registry that are not eligible to purchase products from the dispensaries. As you would expect, the growth of the registry numbers have slowed as the market has matured over the last 9 years. For example, in 2023, we saw almost an 11% growth, and that dropped down in 2024 to about 3.5%. And some of that was due to the Amendment 3, the rec amendment, and people stopped renewing and stopped going to the market in anticipation of going rec. As soon as that failed, we saw a lot of those people come back to the medical market, and the registry began to climb again. This year, we're looking to add probably 40 to 45,000 patients on the registry this calendar year. We've already added 33,000 year to date, which is probably 3.75-4% growth, which is still solid given your 9th year of the program. So it's still growing. I don't know how it's growing in relationship to the increased stores and supplies, but the numbers are definitely increasing.
Right.
I think you asked what the difference is between the Florida program and other states.
Yeah, just big picture in terms of maybe 1 or 2 states you want to compare with. Because sometimes, I mean, it's a large market, but it seems to be more restrictive than others on the medical side. But whatever you can share.
So it is a much more highly regulated market than any other state. The requirements of the physicians to appropriately see a patient first in person, and then to go through what they're required to do to put a patient on the registry, is pretty onerous. So it is not a quick, easy, simple process for the physician. And then for the patient, it's complicated because there are statutory or regulatory limits on how many milligrams. So the doctor doesn't just put you on the registry and say, you can now go buy whatever you want. The doctor has to approve you for the specific routes and specific milligrams per route. And you can use those milligrams up. There are 70-day allotments. And to make it even more complicated, if a physician believes that it's medically necessary for you to have above the statutory limit of milligrams, they have to then go to the state. The doctor has to go to the state on behalf of the patient and request what they call a request for exception, an RFE, and ask the state's permission to grant the patient an increased allotment of milligrams in the 70-day period. So it's a process, and it's pretty restrictive, and it's pretty tight. Where we see that play out in the market and in the financial market is patients sometimes the limits are enough for them medically, and it's enough for them to medicate their needs. However, when there are sales, when a dispensary runs a sale or a special, they want to load up. They can't do it, not because they want to load up and abuse or overuse the product. They want to load up because it's a sale and a great opportunity to save some money. They can't do it because they run out of milligrams. And so that creates the regulatory challenges, create sales problems for the dispensaries and frustration for the patients. So compared to any other market, it is a much more highly regulated medical market.
And just staying on that point, in terms of that allotment, me as a patient, that's an allotment in terms of quantity. There's nothing specified there in terms of brands or strains or stores that I have to go to. But with that allotment, can I just go to one store and then to another store? I don't have to use the full allotment in one store, right? In one chain.
Yeah, the one upside of the program that they've done a good job with is the registry. And so when you go to a dispensary, whatever dispensary it is, they input what you purchased, and that decreases your available milligrams. But you could take those milligrams to as many dispensaries as you want, as long as you have milligrams available. So it's fairly well coordinated.
Right, got it. Thank you. Do you want to give a sense of the scale of your business in Florida? I don't know, I'm not asking you to give market share, but do you have a sense of what % of scripts you handle? How big is your operation in relative terms? Only if you want to disclose.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have 30 locations, and you have to have the physical locations in order to drive new patients. If you don't have a physical location, you can't see a new patient. So we drive a lot of new patients for that very reason. Many of our competitors sort of closed up shop and are just doing the renewals. So we continue to drive. I mean, we see patients far in excess new patients of what you see put on the registry each week. So we're seeing first time patients who are already on the registry. So we're capturing market share every month and seeing a large percentage of the patients out there.
Aaron, are you expecting any changes on the regulatory side of the medical program that could help the growth of the market?
I'm always expecting changes. We're coming into another legislative session. The next legislative session starts officially in January 13th, I believe, of 2026. However, the committee weeks will begin in November. And so we'll start seeing bills filed in November. And there will be movement, I'm sure, on, or at least attempts of movement on the hemp market, which will impact the cannabis market, and maybe on other things as well. We don't have clarity yet on what that'll be. The committees are still getting formed, but certainly I do expect a lot of activity this session in Tallahassee.
Right, but anything in terms of insurance reimbursement on the prescription side, or not really, not in the short term?
I can't imagine that anytime soon. I mean, that could get tied up into the rescheduling, which, I would hate to try to predict what's going to happen there.
Right. But I'm talking about at the Florida level.
No. I don't see it. There's no movement to add cannabis as an approved service for health insurance at this time.
Right.
That I know.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, Bob, I'm going to come back to you in terms of what we were talking about, and you've given color in your conference calls, of course, about what you're doing. Do you have your full brand portfolio available in Florida right now, or do you still have a little opportunity to add more brands there?
No, we're still rolling in brands now as we speak. So, well, we were woefully deficient. But as I said before, our medicine brands are primarily flower and vapes. Is now active in the space. We're moving forward with our haha gummies now on the shelves, as are our Dreamland chocolate brands. So, as I said, also when the BHO comes on live here in November, we'll be rolling in a number of other brand opportunities there in the BHO space.
Right.
Pablo, if I could go back a second, because I think it was an excellent point just a moment ago. With respect to the legislature, I've been pretty active in the last 2 sessions trying to find some relief for this hemp invasion, and I do call it an invasion, and it has had a dramatic impact on our sector and in the industry, and that it's terribly frustrating that you can see operators come into the space without any regulatory oversight, and really just kind of dominate the space. And that is a huge issue. There are a number of legislators that have worked very hard and tirelessly to bring some balance to that segment, including Senator Burton. But we just can't seem to get traction, and it just seems like everybody, they just turned a blind eye to what has happened. And I use as an example, you just spend some time in the Keys. Go down to Duval Street and watch what's happened there. The legal stores are literally dying or dead, and the hemp operators have just dominated the space and run everybody out. And we don't have reciprocity in Florida, so it's impossible to sell to any tourist customers coming through the various tourist cities without that hold medical cards elsewhere. So I think it's important that the industry come together. Obviously we all want to see adult use pass, but it's also, I believe, important that as an industry we coalesce and fight as a group to protect what we have. We have literally allowed hemp to, it's an invasion. And this is intoxicating hemp. Let's not kid ourselves. We've tested multiple operators throughout the state on a regular basis. And it's just a blatant slap in the face to the regulated industry, in my opinion.
Look, I mean,
Yeah.
given that you go on, Danny, I mean, given that you brought up the hemp subject, I guess a couple of questions there, and for the audience also. In the case of Texas, right, we've had a similar things have played out in a similar way in the sense that the legislature tried to ban hemp derivatives, and then the governor vetoed the ban, right? But in the case of Texas, the governor went back and said, well, you have to come in with a more other regulations, packaging, age gating, those type of things. Let's see where things end up in Texas, right? In the case of Florida, after the ban, it seems that nothing else happened, right? We're still working out the future rules, and that's still unclear. I mean, any thoughts on that if you want to follow up, or Daniel on that?
Well, I mean, it's one of the silliest things there is. I mean, I want to make my position very clear. I am not hating the hemp people. I respect the hustle. So again, I don't want to become some meme. I don't actually fault them for it. I mean, they're just doing what they got to do. But this is how silly things are. I mean, they built this whole complex Florida structure to protect everything between packaging and how it's sold and everything. But for every dispensary, there's one or two hemp shops. I was just in Jacksonville. I mean, they have top shelf flower on their windows. It says wholesale available. For example, I walked into one of these shops. I started talking to them. I was very open. We had a nice discussion. I mean, they've got turkey bags in the back of greenhouse depths from California that they're literally wholesaling to all the other shops around town. This one shop selling 500 pounds a month out of 2,000 feet in a strip center in Jacksonville. And it's literally, and on the flip side, I mean, I've been in multiple thousands light grows in California, and 75% of their product ends up in the hemp markets in North Carolina and Georgia. It's literally the same exact weed that gets sold in California. They just cut it early. They cold cure it. There's ways to finagle the testing. THCA, all it is just THC. It's just, so all these politicians that are making all these complex regulatory environments, it's a slap in the face. I mean, we can't do drinks in Florida. These guys are selling drinks. We can't have cool packaging in Florida. These guys have cool packaging.
Right.
We can't import our weed from California. They're importing the weed from California, Oregon. It makes a total mockery, and the fact that they are fighting for them to survive. I think there should be a place at the table. In the end, it all should be one market. But going direct to consumer, shipping overnight to people's houses,
Sure,
paying $650 a year to have a hemp dealer license when we pay $1.5 million every 18 months. I don't see how that all aligns. And I would imagine the politicians, if they used logic and reason, they would come to the same conclusion. So there's obviously other things at play here. Again, more props to the hemp guys. Keep hustling and grind it out. But it just doesn't make any sense.
right. But on this subject, Bob, I mean, again, on the same subject of hemp derivatives, we've seen in the case of Maryland, pretty much it's been shut down. In the case of Ohio, the governor, pretty much banned it, although it's now going through litigation. Do you have some line of sight in terms of what may come from the state legislature in terms of how they regulate hemp derivatives, Bob, or not really? And are we looking at a timetable, like the next 6 months, a year, or it's just very early days? Or nothing?
Yeah, unfortunately, I wish I could be more optimistic. It's just, again, having lived this through 2 sessions now, and seeing how this has, fallen flat both times, it is really unfortunate. And to Daniel's point, I'm not saying I'm anti-hemp per se. I want everybody playing by the same rules and the same regulatory framework. And they've been given a pass, and it's been overt, and it's hurt our industry dramatically. Yeah. And not just in Florida, but other states. And hopefully reasonable minds will prevail at some point. It's just shocking to me. To Daniel's point, I was in, outside of Jacksonville in that really cute little tourist city there. Sorry, the name escapes me. But, my wife was shopping for dresses, and she called me outside. I was sitting outside on the phone. She goes, "You've got to come in here and see this." for yourself. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, what's going on? I walked into this shop with my wife, and they had a full line of hemp products in a dress shop. And it's like everywhere. And it's, I'm just looking for some balance and some fairness. And if they want to compete in the space, then compete under the same regulatory framework that we do, same type of licensure. And then, we'll see where things go. I'm not afraid of competition. I just want it to be fair competition.
Yeah. What I'm surprised about, and maybe, I'm sorry if I'm repeating the question, is that in other states, given what's going on, there's been some action by the legislature, right? One or two, a senator or a state representative trying at the state level, trying to get some legislation through, right? Sometimes they don't succeed, sometimes they do. But in the case of Florida, is there a bill that we can mention? Bill number, whatever,
yeah.
it's going through that? Aaron, go on.
I'll answer that. So to be clear, we're not in session now, so there are no bills yet. Nothing has been filed. So we don't know what will happen the next session. We'll know mid-January to mid-March. It's a 60-day session. So we'll know by mid-March if the legislature does anything this year. But don't forget, they did do something last session. The governor vetoed it. So the legislature passed pretty strong legislation, and Governor DeSantis vetoed it. So whether or not the legislature will come back and do that again, and what Governor DeSantis would do is an open question. It is a different every year is a different year, but we are now moving towards Governor DeSantis is term limited out. He's a lame duck-ish governor. So there is already the next campaign has started. So there could be some different results this year.
Right. Right, but again, I mean, what's interesting to me is that in the case of Texas, the governor vetoed the ban, but said, but you have to do this. In the case of Florida, he vetoed, and there wasn't a but, to my knowledge.
Definitely not a ban.
Basically, back to square one, meaning no regulation or very little regulation, other than business license and
sure. Now let's move. Got it.
Forgot to throw in infused pre-rolls. That was another one. Drinks infused. I mean, we can't even do infused pre-rolls drinking. That's like a huge sector, and these guys can do it all. And they have no medical card signs on every one of their doors.
I hear you. So look, let's move the discussion now to the state. I mean, obviously, we are talking about the state of the market and the impact from the hemp derivatives. But we get data from Headset in dollars, and then we get data from OMO, which is volumes. And the numbers are not perfect. But what's your view in terms of the dollar sales for the market? Is the market growing, declining? Are we reaching saturation from a store standpoint? Is the market become more promotional? How have things changed since the ballot did not pass last November? I'll start with you, Daniel. Just your big picture view in terms of underlying.
Yes to all the above. I mean, their patients aren't being added fast enough for the stores that have been added. So if all these hemp shops went away tomorrow, and the only place you could buy legal intoxicating THC products for the stores, it'd be no issue. But until either that happens or recreational gets passed, it's going to be there's just going to be not enough customers and too many stores, and people continue to open stores. There has been pricing compression. It has become very promotional, like every other state. I mean, everything kind of follows the same path. But unless rec happens or some changes happen in the hemp, I don't see. It's just expensive to have your medical card. You got to pay that fee every however many months. And so a lot of people, why would they've got better offerings at the hemp shop, so why would they all get their cards? Right. My argument to that is it's safer, it's tested, and the quality is a lot better. I haven't seen very good quality in these hemp shops. They're basically getting low quality greenhouse from California and Oregon. So I think that is a differentiating factor, is the testing, the safeness, and the quality. But when these guys are importing California weed for $200-300 a pound, when all of us on the phone can't even produce it for that, it makes it tough.
Right. And just, the math we worked out based on, again, the Headset data is that price per gram for flower at the retail level in Florida, it's around $4.40, right? And most states in the East are on that $6 to $7 range. So it seems to be quite low. I don't know if that number rings a bell here. Maybe
we're a lot higher. We're a lot higher than that, but I mean, maybe that makes sense for some of the greenhouse flower.
Okay, Bob, I know I don't want to be the dead horse here, but again, you're in terms of what's happening with underlying sales for the market, how have things changed since November? Any further color you can give? Has it become more promotional? Some townships seems to be saturated with stores, we hear, but any color you can share there?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Daniel said. The market is entirely promotional. There's significant price compression. We're all battling for a limited customer base, and we've got more and more stores coming into the market, every year. So that's just the reality. And again, and I want to echo what Daniel said. Unless we see some, regulatory change with respect to hemp, or we go adult use, it's going to continue to be a challenging market. That's just the reality. And we're fortunate that when we did the VidaCann deal, that brought us to 26 stores at the time. We've closed a few stores in the Miami area, just a completely non-competitive market down there. And we've added 7 since we did the deal. So I think we'll be at 34 stores next week. But again, we had a much more ambitious rollout plan, a contingent upon adult use. And so we're being much more careful as we move forward on store openings. And look, the reality is in Florida, to get a store cash flow positive, we were originally estimating in the 9-month range, but in reality, it's closer to 18 months now, for these stores to actually start to perform.
Right.
So
I think the one nice thing about Florida, having stores in Florida, is the security requirements. They don't have them, so you're able to actually do lower volume and actually make some money. Whereas, California, sometimes it's 1-2 armed guards and, it's running 20 grand, 30 grand a month. So not having that is super helpful in Florida.
Right. Just staying with both of you there, we hear that there's a lot of assets for sale out there, right? I won't mention the companies. We know that in the case of cannabis and mint, obviously there's been change of hands in some cases, right? Mint bought the cannabis operation. In that context of assets being sold maybe at cheaper prices, is there an opportunity for you to expand via M&A as opposed to opening new stores, or that just doesn't make sense given the landscape that we're talking about, the competition and the hemp landscape? Bob, if you want to start with that.
Yeah, look, there are opportunities there. I've had conversations with a handful of other operators. It's just an incredibly challenging market right now. And, it's tough to do equity deals with our stock, trading where it is. It's so incredibly dilutive. It doesn't pencil. But I think, as the market continues to contract and as we get more and more competition, it's going to happen. There's going to be forced integration with operators in order to survive. So
right.
Scale is important. I do agree with that.
Daniel,
Yeah.
M&A opportunity or not really?
Potentially. I mean, we've taken some locations, some subleases off of some bigger operators that, they were just thinning down the herd and we needed a place so we have done some subleases of existing locations. I mean, I think as far as existing stores, I mean, there is some value there, but the one other good thing about Florida is if the city allows it, it's not very restricted as far as where you can go. So you can really get on some good retail corridors, on some good corners. So that is a nice thing. From the standpoint of infrastructure, I definitely think there's opportunities, if some other big operator has some grow that they don't need that we could slide into. We are looking at those opportunities because that can help us kind of get the next wave of stores open without having to go spend, $20 million on building a bunch of lights out. So we are kind of keeping our eyes peeled for those types of opportunities.
Right. And again, here, not to put you on the spot, either you, Daniel, or Bob, but when I look at the OMO data, there are some operators that seem to be doing much better than others, right? Or that stand out in terms of revenue per store. I don't know, Daniel, if you want to highlight anyone or any companies I'm not saying that you're going to benchmark yourself against someone else, but there seem to be some operators that, despite all the challenges that are very clear, are managing better. And correct me if I'm wrong, right? And
yeah, I think
anything that you look at.
Obviously, Trulieve, I mean, they just dominate. You kind of have to take them out of the equation when you're kind of running your numbers on everything, but they definitely are. It's pretty phenomenal what they've been able to do in the state. Much respect, Jungle Boys. I mean, they're crushing the numbers on a per store basis. I think we sit pretty respectable when it comes to flower. I think we have a ton of room to grow with the milligrams. But yeah, there's definitely some groups out there that are doing sunburn. I think that's above their weight class, especially on the extract side. So yeah, we're kind of looking around what people are doing and how we can kind of implement some of the strategies that have worked.
Right. And Bob, I don't know if you want to comment on the same topic here, but
Yeah, no, look, we've, I obviously, Trulieve is Trulieve, but look, we think we've done a poor job until very recently, in getting more profitable on a store by store basis. Look, I look at, we're roughly 5% of the store count in the state, and we're probably half of the volume, sell-through volume. So there's a lot of pickup for us. We've just got to get better, again, in what we're growing, how we're growing, and the product SKUs that we're putting into the stores. So, we're solving for that. So, we're pretty excited that there's some margin for us to pick up there. But again, recognize the overall market. It's continue to be challenging, but we're glad we're there, and we're gonna keep punching up.
right. Look, I'm going to move the discussion now, Aaron, to what may happen in November 26. But just I want to read a couple of questions that are coming through. Someone, and I don't know if we have numbers. Do we have a sense of the size of a hemp derivatives market in Florida? How big are the sales? Do we have a sense? I know there's a couple of shows.
The hemp market, you say?
Yeah, for derivatives.
I don't know if that is actually reported. Maybe the guys know, but I mean, I would guess it's every bit bigger. If not, I would think it's bigger, maybe double or at least equal to double what the medical market is. I don't know, but it's billions, I would safely say.
Okay. So Aaron, if we just talk about setting the stage for November 26, you talked about the governor lame duck, right? What's the process, not to get too legalistic, but what's the process to put rec in the ballot by November 2026? What's the probability that it will go? Is the Supreme Court at the state level still against it? What is the 60% threshold still going to apply, or are they going to move it down to 50? What can you share in that regard, Aaron, based on what you know?
Sure. At this point, the effort to put an amendment on the ballot to allow adult use in Florida has essentially three big hurdles. The first is acquiring enough signatures, which the legislature has passed some laws that have been challenged and held up in part, making that more difficult. But they have to get out there and they have to get the signatures, enough signatures from registered voters, and get them appropriately filed and certified. That's an uphill battle. It's expensive. It's doable, but it is an uphill battle. Not only do they have to get the number, it's a big number, but they have to get it in a certain percentage of voter districts. So it's not enough to go to Miami and just collect a ton there. You've got to travel around the state and get them from 50% of all of the congressional districts in Florida. So it is a big uphill task, and it is not cheap. If they do that, then they get one, and they've gotten to the threshold they need for judicial review. So the next big hurdle is to go to the Supreme Court and have the Supreme Court certify that the ballot language is a single subject and that it's appropriate for the general ballot in November of 2016. They did that last year, and they got passed through the Supreme Court, so they're not completely opposed to it. They made some changes this year in response to some of the criticisms, which I think could make that a little more challenging, but that's another big hurdle they have to get to. And then the final hurdle, and where they failed last time, is to get to the 60% approval at the election. The common wisdom would tell you that in 2016, that's an off-year election. It's a gubernatorial election, but not a presidential election, that the turnout will be lower. And the theory is, with a lower turnout, you're less likely to get the cannabis-friendly voters to show up. And so the 60% mark becomes even more challenging with a lower turnout. And if it's not a competitive race, meaning that the Republican gubernatorial candidate is far ahead of the Democrat, which is what happened last time, and by all means, it would appear that there's not a whole lot of Democratic organization to challenge whoever the Republican candidate is, that the Democrats will stay home. And the Republicans will show up to vote for their candidate. And again, the conventional wisdom, this isn't true for everybody, of course, but the Republicans are a more conservative voter bloc, obviously, than the Democrats, and therefore less likely to support cannabis. So if they do get the signatures as required and certified, and they do get through the Supreme Court review, they still have the 60% threshold in November to get over.
Yeah, sounds pretty bearish, but Bob, Daniel, maybe you have a different view in terms of how things play out with the November 26 ballot, if there is one.
I mean, I'm just praying. I mean, that was depressing, Aaron. You're not wrong. I mean, everything you said is spot on. I mean, it really should have passed last time. I mean, I think that 3% difference, what you saw was a lot of people that support cannabis, that smoke cannabis, that use cannabis, that are all for recreational use of cannabis that were anti this bill. And I think that was literally the difference between winning and losing. And I think, certain groups sort of overplayed the aggressiveness on getting it approved. And I think it rubbed a big portion of Florida the wrong way. And those people that should have been for it were against it. And so, yeah, it was kind of soul crushing for all the operators. I mean, I think there isn't a cannabis operator out there that couldn't have used rec in Florida for the balance sheet. And so I hope Aaron's not right, but he could be. But I don't know. We shall see.
Okay. But Bob, before you answer, I mean, Aaron, in terms of, I'm trying to remember, like 1 year ahead of the November 24 ballot, we were hearing from Trulieve that they were gathering signatures, they were investing a lot of money trying to get this passed, right? I'm not
Right.
hearing the same thing right now. So I'm not saying that they are not doing it, but it just seems that we
They're
are
spending.
behind time. Trulieve was a big
That's
investor, right? In terms of
yeah,
getting the effort. I can't remember the exact name of the organization that was
yeah,
gathering the signatures and trying to promote
yeah,
getting the ballot passed.
yeah.
I just don't see
Yeah.
that happening right now, or maybe I'm
The,
wrong, or maybe there's still a lot
this,
of time left.
the sponsor is Smart and Safe. To
Right.
date,
Right.
the only real contributor, if you look on the state website, has been Trulieve. And I don't want to quote the number. I don't know what it is, but last quarter they did donate seven figures. They did put some money into it. Whether it's enough, I don't know, but Trulieve is certainly still supporting and pushing it. So there is a live effort going on to get there. And like I said, they have gotten to the level requiring
Sure.
Supreme Court review, so they will get that.
Sure. Right. Bob, I mean,
Yes.
what's your view in terms of how things play out by November 26th?
Boy, I got to tell you, kind of like Daniel said, I hope Aaron's wrong.
Well, to be clear, it wasn't a prediction. But
No.
It's where we are.
But I think the issues you raised again, we're spot on. It's going to be a heavy lift again. And look, last ballot question, it did not help to have the governor out literally every other commercial, just blasting the industry. And I think it's going to take more than Trulieve to direct this process. One thing about Florida that I find interesting is we don't have a real industry group, representing, the entire cannabis space, and it seems very, fractured at best. And I think that was one of the things the governor exploited in his side was this, allowing this giant monopoly just take over an industry. And that didn't resonate with a lot of voters down there. And, hopefully, on the PR side of this, as we get together as a group, as an industry, we're talking, the interesting thing is here, guys, we closed our transaction in May of 24. I never heard from anybody from the trade group. I never heard anyone request a dime from us.
But Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, isn't it the other way around? I could flip the argument and say, well, Trulieve is the one that's making all the investment, so maybe other companies should take the initiative to call Trulieve and say, hey, how can we help?
Well, I agree with you, and we in fact did everything we could outside of that coalition. We were very active in promoting the question and spent what we consider a considerable amount of money to promote that. But again, we didn't have a regulated industry sitting around the table talking about this, and I think it worked to our disadvantage as an industry.
Sure.
And because it allowed the governor's team to exploit this monopolistic argument that unfortunately got a lot of traction. And there's a path, and I applaud Trulieve for making that effort. I just think there should be other folks sitting at the table, providing input in addition to just writing checks.
Right. But is that happening right now? Do you have a sense that the industry is coming, together as opposed to in the past, or no change?
I don't have that sense.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Just, last session, again, spent a lot of time in Tallahassee working on this hemp bill. And it was shocking to me the lack of input from a broader, industry group. And I felt like I was out on an island. And others were advocating and working, but we weren't working in concert. And again, I
Right.
think it's important that as an industry, we come together to an association of some sort to really protect our interests collectively.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I guess some companies are more focused on just trying to get rescheduling done and, and contributing money to that effort at the federal level. And maybe I'm not saying they're dropping the ball at the state level, but there could be some of that going on.
yeah, look, it's a very difficult process if everything falls our way. And, it gets much more complicated, obviously.
Right.
Once the politics get involved and, the PR spins start as we get closer to the election.
Right. Aaron, just one question on the same topic for you. So, but just trying to find a silver lining here, given the governor is not running for re-election or cannot run for re-election, maybe he will be less vocal if there is a ballot measure to have rec, or that's wishful thinking on my side.
Well, I don't know whether he'll be more or less vocal, but there'll be less emphasis on what he says because he'll be outgoing. So there'll be less attention on the lame duck governor than there are.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see. I think in terms of public perception and what Tallahassee does, I think they will wait and see what kind of cues they get from Washington in terms of what are we thinking about cannabis and adult use cannabis from Washington, and it'll depend on who the Republican nominee is and what position they stake out on the issue. I think that person, whoever they are, will be more important. The candidate will be more important than the outgoing governor on that election day.
And to be honest, I should be following it probably more closely, and I will, of course. But in terms of whoever is leading that primary among Republicans, do we have a sense of where they stand with cannabis, or too early to say?
I would say it's too early to say. We do have a leading candidate who's backed by President Trump, and this candidate's got some interesting history with cannabis. So we'll see how he publicly supports or doesn't support cannabis. But you have to understand he has to win the primary first, and so oftentimes the candidates in the Republican Party will need to move to the right on issues.
And has Governor DeSantis been vocal in terms of who he's going to support in the primary?
That's a good question. I know he has not endorsed the same person that President Trump has.
Right. Okay. All right. Look, I'm just going to I know we're almost running out of time here. What I would say, it's still a large medical market, right, for U.S. standards. And there's the potential that someday Florida will be rec, right? So I'm just trying to put a positive spin on what's been maybe, more negative here. But despite all this context, obviously, Daniel, you guys are expanding, right? Planning to have 25 stores.
We're bullish on Florida.
Yeah,
obviously.
Give me 1 second. I'm not trying to rephrase things here. Yes, there are concerns about the market, but here you have, Planet 13 adding a VHO facility so they can have a full suite of products in their stores. So Planet 13 has upside, even in the current context. Cookies, you are going, to 25 stores by middle of next year. So despite and it's good that we're all recognizing the challenges, right? And even the challenges to get rec passed. But I could make the argument that both of you as operators have some upside even within this context. And again, maybe I'm overemphasizing things here, but any color you want to share there, Daniel?
We're bullish on Florida. We're going to continue growing. Obviously, if rec doesn't happen and the hemp guys don't get shut down, it's going to be at a slower clip. But we're making money. It's not as much as we'd want, but we see a path to having a profitable business and growing that business. It just really depends on the regulatory framework, but we're bullish overall. It's the best margins we have of any state. Obviously, you have to spend a lot of money to get to that spot, but we are bullish on Florida.
Right. The only comment I would make is that I'm surprised in other states, like if I hear Virginia or Pennsylvania, I see the operators working with the legislature, 1 or 2 people or more lobbyists to try to get legislation put forward. So I want to think that in the case of Florida, that's also happening, but we won't know until the session is open, you're saying, Aaron, right? There's no public information before the session begins.
Right. Well, it's hard to know before bills are actually being filed.
Right.
What's happening behind the scenes. Correct.
Right.
We're working with legislatures now. We do have a group. I have a group of competitors and colleagues that I work with in Florida, and we do lobby as a group on behalf of the physicians.
But on that point, what changes would you like to have implemented on the medical side that are realistic, Aaron? That could be proposed in the legislature.
Well, we have a whole list of them. We'd like some protections for employees not to get terminated if they're a medical patient. We'd like to get rid of the cost of a companion card for children. So right now, if a child is a patient and their parent wants to purchase for them, which they have to pay for two cards, which we think is oppressive to children that are sick and need these things. So there are a lot of things we think we could do to make it more accessible for the patient.
Okay. And I'm sorry again to repeat the question, maybe Bob, to you or Daniel, but I assume that now in October, you will have line of sight whether someone in the legislature will put forward a bill that regulates hemp derivatives in Florida. But it seems that you don't have that.
Yes, Pablo, there will be. We basically repurposed the bill that died last session 2 sessions ago, and as Aaron said, that bill basically passed out session before, the governor vetoed it.
Right.
So that framework is in place. It's just one thing about Florida that I've learned from the legislative process, it's a very short session and it moves at an incredible pace, and it's fairly easy to get a sense whether things are moving pretty quickly. But we're not even at committee assignments yet, and but it'll come together, and when it does, it'll move at warp speed. And we need some change. We need some significant help from the legislature on this hemp process in the interim. And I'm optimistic that a third time may be a charm there, that we get some movement. We'll see what happens on the ballot question. And again, I want to be optimistic and kind of echo what was said earlier. I notwithstanding all the challenges, I believe Florida is a really dynamic market, and there's tremendous upside.
Thank you. Look, I know we're almost out of time. I'm going to read 2 quick questions from the emails here. One, delivery in Florida is allowed, but do the economics of delivery work? And I'm not talking about pickup, but I'm talking about home delivery, right? And it's not like you're posting it by mail. You have to have your own vehicle to deliver it, right? But does delivery really work as a business, Bob, in Florida? Just a quick answer.
It has not worked for us. We tried it in several markets. You need a lot of density. You need a customer base in close proximity to the schedules. Just didn't work. And plus, you got a requirement that you have 2 people in the vehicle. The labor cost alone makes it unworkable from our perspective at this time.
And then
the 2 people kills it. It doesn't make much sense. I mean, you could make it happen and make it and scale it, and it could be something great, but you'd have to spend an extraordinary amount of resources.
Right. And then one more person asking in terms of, are patients sticky to cannabis chains or certain brands? It just seems to me that people shop around a lot. They may go to True Leaf for something, Jungle Boys for something else, and then Planet 13 or Cookies for something else. But maybe I'm wrong. Just any color you can share on patient behavior or consumer behavior. Daniel.
Yeah, there's definitely loyal customers, but they're deal shopping. I mean, they're who's got the best deal on this day and that day, and like what Bob was saying, it's hard to build up to get all the SKUs you want, so you can't always get everything you want from every shop, except for maybe a couple of the big guys. So they'll go get some flour from us, they'll go get something from somebody else, and so but yeah, no, we do see loyal customers, but they're deal hopping without a doubt.
Thank you. All right. So look, I mean, we're out of time here, but closing remarks. And again, thank you to all 3 speakers. Again, I would focus on from a long-term perspective within the Florida is a market with a lot of potential. And as Bob said, very dynamic. But Bob, closing remarks from your side. And if you want, pitch your Planet 13 stock to our audience here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Pablo. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to participate in the call today. Look, the entire sector is going through some significant challenges, and at the federal level, we remain optimistic that we're going to see some movement on 280E and banking, and but I think that catalyst, we've seen short bumps, from a public standpoint in our stock, significant bumps upward when the president makes announcements, but again, you see that drop off pretty quickly as well. We need something to happen. I think it'll be great for the entire industry. And, I'm optimistic something will happen. And whether it happens in 25, I don't know. But I think in early next year, the Trump administration will do something. With respect to Florida, again, we've outlined all the challenges in detail. Again, in a perfect world, we'd like to see some significant help in the hemp space right now with the issues we're confronting. But from a Planet 13 standpoint, again, It's challenging, but we're glad we're there. The forced integration does not bother us. We actually have adapted quite well to that model. It's just a function of getting products into the stores that customers want to buy. And to Daniel's point, it is an incredibly competitive market now, and it's, consumers aren't stuck to one dispensary. They are moving around looking for deals and for different products at different stores. So it's our job to service, those demands and those needs, and we're doing everything we can to meet that. But again, I see a bright future for Florida.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, closing remarks.
Sure. We're going to stay focused on what we've been focused on since the beginning, and that's compassionate care to our patients. We've got a lot of great physicians who care about their patients and care about the Florida market. And we continue to stay focused on making sure there's access for our patients, that they have the products they need and get the relief they're looking for. And, there will be change. There has been change over the last 9 years, and that creates opportunity. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So, we just, as long as we keep focused on our core value of providing compassionate care to our patients, I think we'll be fine. And I think the markets will adjust.
Thank you. Aaron, I'm sorry, I know we are past the hour here, but someone was asking if they want, you are a private company, but if they wanted to invest in your business, could they do that? And are you expanding capital? Are you raising capital? I don't know if you want to, only if you want to answer.
Look, I'm always open to opportunities to bring more value to our patients and look for ways to do that. At the moment, we're not involved in any capital raises. We just simply don't need it, but we're always open to discussions with a creative partnership, certainly.
Thank you. Daniel, thank you again for joining us. Any closing remarks here?
No, thanks, guys. Appreciate the conversation. It's always good. I think everything has been said, so I appreciate you guys.
So someday cookies could go public, right? But it's just different businesses. One is a brand side, one is operation side, right?
Correct. Yep. It's many, many different heads and pieces.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining. Everyone have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.